This is Ewan, ER Physiotherapy. I've probably talked about him to most of you. This is where I come to get mobile, stretchy, so that I can keep competing at a high level. So Ewan's going to take us through some mobility stuff, some stretching stuff, and then we'll do a bit of Q&A. I think most of the questions have come for Caleb. It's pretty much this whole email that I sent you over.
Yeah.
To be honest, yeah, that just all came for Caleb.
Okay. It's good content, so.
Yeah, it's alright, yeah. And then we'll go through a bit of mobility stuff, so we'll actually put the chairs away and get going through some stuff. Get moving about so we're not sitting on our asses for an hour and a half. And see if we can implement some of the stuff back into the gym. Alright, cool. Good to go, Ian?
Yeah, good to go.
Lovely. I will get out of the way.
We're ER Physiotherapy. My name's Ewan. Founded the company about 3-4 years ago, just with the goal of helping and educating as many people as we can to get healthy and just live their lives pain-free. And an important part of that we found has been mobility. We've worked with athletes just all over the world and loads of different principles. People from figure skating, powerlifting, CrossFit, and again, working with the athletes at the Rogue Invitational, we see how much importance they put on their movement. Like working with the top athletes around the world, we've noticed one common thing. It's they spend as much time on how they move as well as how much weight they're moving. So with that, what is mobility and why is it important? The difference between mobility and flexibility is how much range that you currently have whilst going through a particular range of motion or a movement pattern, so i.e. squat depth. How far you can get down would be your mobility for that day, not necessarily your flexibility. Flexibility is defined as the range of motion a muscle has through a specific range in isolation. So the difference is mobility has a lot of moving parts in order to come together. It's a lot of coordination, but it's also the lowest hanging fruit that we have that we can train to get the biggest momentum in our day-to-day life in terms of lifting, health, everything from deadlifting to gardening. So why would your mobility suck even though you're really flexible? Okay, so a muscle can be long and weak. We all know from postural issues, we all sit hunched over. These muscles can be really long, so really flexible, but really weak. If a muscle has just little to no load on it, then it can feel free to lengthen. There's minimal risk for it. So lying on your back, pulling your hamstring up, pulling your leg into the air, although it is really hard to do, it's minimal risk for the muscle. So a lot of people can allow that to happen. Whereas bending down, same idea, we're creating the same angles at the hip, bending down to touch your toes, completely different. It's why a lot of people can think, I've got great hamstrings, why can't I touch my toes? Because they're weak in a specific movement pattern, doesn't allow them to access that range. We need to think of like the neural input of the muscle. So remember those Chinese finger traps you'd get as kids? You put your fingers in it, the harder you pulled, you lengthened it, but it would never let go. That's just training flexibility rather than training mobility. If you apply load to that trap, push your fingers together, then pull, you can create as much distance as you want, you escape the trap, and you can create as much gap as you need. That's the same as a muscle. You need to give it stimulus in order to change permanently. So why would you do mobility? This is important for enhancing movement efficiency, reducing your injury risk, and improves performance under load. If we don't work consistently on mobility, then we're only strengthening the range of motion that we're really comfortable in. If you're squatting and you can only squat to here before you get stuck, okay, you can get really strong in that range of motion. What happens in day-to-day life if suddenly something happens and you go past that? That's when you get injured. So you might be really strong from here to here, but you don't have the strength to stop yourself going below parallel, or just something happens. You play a field sport, you try something new, you go to, say, reformers Pilates, you get moved, or yoga, you get moved into an area that you're not comfortable with. Your body doesn't have a pattern for that. It doesn't know what's going to go on. You get injured. You have that risk there. So I lost my place. So in essence, mobility is strength, coordination, and flexibility. Just being weak at the extreme ends of range is just a recipe for injury. Okay. I think we'll talk about this in a little bit. Some people emailed in questions about them. There are a couple of tools you can use to aid in your mobility. You've got foam rollers, the dreaded spiky ball that I'm sure everyone has been given by a physio at some point, massage guns. These are all things that help along, but nothing is a substitute for hard work, okay? Muscle activation is key for this. And so mobility training, it's harder than you think, okay? Everyone thinks a little stretch, you hold it for a period of time, you move on. The intensity of your mobility training should be similar to the intensity of your weight training, okay? If you're doing a mobility session and you're not sweating at the end of it, we're not quite pushing hard enough, okay? Like strength training, you need to give a sufficient intensity to the muscle in order for it to elicit change. Otherwise, there's no reason for your body to change, and staying in that suboptimal position can cause injuries in itself. So that's why, again, I'll go back to the postural issue. A lot of people sit like that. Now that's putting load across the upper back, but not enough load in order to adapt, change, and grow to fit that, to basically cope with that. It should feel a minimal intensity of about 4 out of 10. Okay, so you're pushing to almost discomfort with how far you're pushing it in order to adapt. If you're not pushing that hard, then you're breaking down, but giving no reason to recover. So what you're trying to achieve should be what your mobility should reflect that. If you're just trying to run, if you're doing a marathon or something like that, you don't actually have to be that mobile. You might do some stretching for recovery, but it's actually quite beneficial for you to be tight, like a spring. You're moving, you need to be efficient. If you're flopping about all the place, really inefficient for running, you're going to tire yourself out for a marathon, okay? If you're focusing around like squat, bench, and deadlift, then you need to be very mobile. You need to be working intense into your mobility. And if you're doing things like strongman training or Olympic lifting, which mean you need to get into really awkward positions with heavy weight, then that's how you need to be training your mobility. Awkward positions, heavy weight. So should you do mobility pre or post training? Both, really. Pre, why? You access new ranges of motion and not just the current ranges of motion that you already have. If we go back to the squat range, if you're not accessing new ranges of motion, you're always going to get stuck into that same one. You overload joints in certain positions, you run the risk of injuries reoccurring. You also then get into really bad habits. You tend to hit a strength wall pretty quickly with your mobility because you're not accessing the same level of muscles that you would if you're going through full range of motion. So, and then you also get into points that once the weight gets heavy, it pushes you out of position. So you're really happy doing that. It pushes you a little bit lower. You have to dump the weight. So you never progress past that certain point because you don't have the mobility to access the muscle, access the strength to get you back up out that hole. So, and when you start a session having warmed up from a mobility routine, you'll start to experience the benefits of your training earlier within that training session. You're warmed up, you've accessed new range of motion, you've already gone through a lot of load. So you're ready to take on more. So your pre should be really quite intense. And as I said, if you're not sweating from the finish of your mobility, you've not trained hard enough, you should then go into a really specific warm-up. Like if you are doing a deadlift, you then start, you don't think, I've done my mobility, I'm warm, I'm going to go into my working sets. That's injury as well. Okay, huge injury risk there. Post, things to focus on sort of pre-lift. You really want to be focusing on ankle mobility, hip rotation, rib cage elevation, and shoulder rotation. And those are things that we're going to get into after we put some unfortunate person through our mobility assessment, okay? With the aim to control the movement and become familiar with the movement patterns. Post lifting, this is where we're going to get much lower intensity. We're trying to bring heart rate down. We're trying to give a little bit of load to then be thinking about, okay, let's create change, let's grow, let's adapt. And while we've, going back to the finger trap analogy, we've already put the tension on. We've wound that up with the original mobility, and what we're doing now with the post-workout stretch, a bit more of like a flow. You then elongate, stretch out the muscle, and we create those long-lasting changes there. So let's do a little bit of a chat on why mobility is important, how to do it. So really push yourself and make it specific to what you're going to be doing that day. If you're doing a clean and jerk session, and that's pretty much all you're doing, you're going to want to work on wrist mobility, then go up to elbow, go up to shoulder, go onto rib cage, and then open up your hips to be able to catch that. That's why you just work with a coach, and if your coach is good, they're going to be adding a lot of mobility stuff into your warm-up to prepare you. So, bit of a whistle stop here. I think it's better to do things moving. Does anyone have any questions? We did get some questions sent in, so I'll fire through some in a minute. But has anyone got any specific questions about mobility, how it should fit into your program, or really anything? Crack on.
So, if we were at the gym for this program, we're like 45 minutes to an hour per session. How long should our mobility be beforehand and afterwards?
Afterwards, you're really just looking at a 5-minute. What have we worked today? Let's stretch that out. Before, 15 to 20 minutes, either, at home before you leave for the gym, or when you get to the gym, do that there. Even if you had time, say you train in the afternoon, even if you did a mobility session in the morning, a lot of that benefit should feed into the day. So.
Does it not be directly before, like before you jump in?
No, it doesn't have to be directly. Best results come from then, but it doesn't have to be, as long as you get it done at some point before the workout.
I have one.
Crack on.
I'm 35, so can I expect mobility to be less than a 20-year-old?
It's all relative to how you've been moving your entire life. You can get 20-year-olds that come in here that's their range of motion. Because
don't isolate me like that.
because they've spent childhood sedentary, and they've spent their early adulthood sitting, gaming, reading, whatever it is. So they'll be stiff either way. There's a good chance, because they're younger, they might make mobility gains a little bit faster than somebody who's mid-30s and up. Just like strength training and things, they adapt quicker. But there's no reason why at 35, which is young, you can't be, folding yourself in half, forward, back, side to side, whatever it was that you choose. You can make good enough gains from there. So, yeah. Most of it is lifestyle, really, and how, the last 35 years of your life have been. If you've been active, then you're going to be able to make changes really well. If you've been sedentary, then, it's going to take a lot of inertia to get going, but there's no reason that once the ball is rolling, we can't keep it rolling and continue to make progress.
Just like to say, my coach doesn't give me the mobility. Never asked me to do it.
I'd ask for a refund then, but. Okay. So Laura, you had one there?
Well, I was just wondering about when you mentioned wrist stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard two different things. Like for folk that have issues with wrists, some folks say, well, you should mobilise them before you start moving them. But then another camp is like, well, actually, maybe you need to try and strengthen it instead of putting more movement into something that struggles with that range of movement already.
Yeah. So you'd want to kind of do a hybrid. A good mobility training is almost like low load strength training. So we expose it to ranges of motion. So instead of just stretching it in isolation, I'm sorry, that was my fingers, not my wrists. So instead of just stretching it in isolation, we might put you through load. So one of the tests we're going to do, and one of the things we're going to do, is get you onto your hands and knees and start going into an extreme range of motion there under load, which will strengthen it as well as mobilize. So it's not really one or the other. They both have their place, but in order to use it, you'll want to start warming up with load through full range. Does that sort of answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's more of a point really than a question, that when I think mobility, my brain always goes to yoga or Pilates. This is not what you're saying.
No, I mean, they're part of it, absolutely. I mean, yoga is exceptionally good at getting you into positions you wouldn't normally do day to day. I mean, that's part of the point of it, is opening up the body and allowing you to move and sort of explore movement. So, and Pilates does the same. It tends to be a bit more strength focused, but so can yoga. It's all part of a spectrum. You know, you can do just general flexibility work as part of mobility, but mobility is literally just how you're moving and whatever you want to do. The best mobility is strength work. You're getting under a bar and because if you're like Brett and you've got silly weights on your shoulders and that's pushing you down, that's going to do more than, say, a static stretch ever could. So it's all, yoga, Pilates, specific mobility work. It's all part of a spectrum. And if you enjoy that, then you do that. You do the thing that you enjoy the most, because that's going to give you the best long-term benefits, because it will allow you to remain consistent.
So tell us, say you're working deadlift, squat, snatch, whatever it is working just, before you go to working sets, working lighter weights, but is that as much mobility as anything else then?
That's part of it. That's part of priming a movement, yeah.
You're working that range of motion with that lighter load?
Yes, so that's priming the movement. It is partly mobility. The best mobility for squat is squatting. However, if you there's a lot of intricacies, there's a lot of different movements that go into that aren't always covered by the squats, and not all movements during the squats are equal. You have a lot of ankle rotation that you don't necessarily think about, a little bit of knee rotation and hip rotation that don't often occur naturally for people in the squat. So that's a good warm-up, but you want to be priming specific patterns that you want to unlock in the squat.
Okay. So what would that look like then?
So we'll get into the mobility assessment now. In about a couple of minutes, if anyone's got any other questions there.
I have one, but I was hoping somebody else would ask, because I don't know if it's stupid.
Oh no, it's no stupid question.
Ribcage mobility.
Oh, ribcage mobility is...
By the way, that's not a stupid question.
Oh, right.
So it's also
So ribcage mobility, this is getting into a little bit of how we work. So we work on kind of three main sort of power centers of the body. You have your midfoot, your hips, and your ribs. Everything has to be working together, not just in isolation, in order to produce power, produce strength, produce stability. So a lot of people, and we might see it during the assessment on some people, is a lot of people are locked in, okay? You're told a lot of time to brace during squats, brace during deadlifts, and even just day-to-day life gets us into here. Now, a lot of people can't unlock from that, because either they don't have the lat strength to create stability in order to move, or they're just so used to here, breathing from here, we can't get effective diaphragm contraction, which stretches out the ribs. So it's really crucial for squats, and actually a lot of the reason why people can't get into depth in squats is because they're so locked here, they can't get the spinal movement to drop down.
Okay.
So it's a really crucial part, but it's something that a lot of people don't really do. When they think about ribcage mobility, it's all about rotation. It's very little about controlling extension without dumping into the lower back. Grand. We had a question about using a massage gun. What do all the attachments do and how best to use it? all the attachments do pretty much the same thing. They're all diffuse. One's a little pinpoint one for getting into small areas. I tend to just use, on mine, this little foam ball thing that comes with it. Use it wherever. It's not going to create long-lasting change. It's something that you can use after a workout to just flush, get some blood flow going, but it's not going to be intense enough to, again, elicit the change that we want. Does feel nice. If you're a little bit stiff, use it. What is the pinpoint stab of feeling I get in my upper back area when reaching over to grab something like no weight, and it's like an itch on the inside? That's usually neural tension. Did anyone here ask that question? Yeah. So it's usually neural tension. If you're really tight, you've got the 3 main nerves down your arm, come down your arm, but they also go underneath your shoulder blade as well. So that if you're tight, and you have tight rib cage or anything, you reach forward, that's putting a lot of stretch on the nerve, both at the neck and here. So it can almost come like this sort of phantom pain in between the shoulder blades. So you'd want to be working on neck range of motion, free up the nerve, and that should get rid of that sort of phantom pain. Recovered optimum stretch intensity. Whose right leg longer than left leg? Yeah. We're going to have a look at your... Okay, we're going to have a look at your... Might use you for a bit of an assessment for ankle mobility and low back mobility as well. Sometimes people, it looks like they've got a longer leg on the leg press because they've got a hip shift, which causes them to not be able to extend fully. So we'll look into that for you there. Yes, being stationary or driving for long periods can undo the benefits of stretching if you're not stretching regularly enough. Okay, if you're a driver, you do a lot of static work, that can, or you're at an office job, that can add a lot of stress and strain that you need to undo. The way I try and teach it with people is it's like a sink. You've got all these taps going into it. You've got work stress, life stress, gym, hobbies, whatever. All those taps are going into the sink. Once that fills up and spills over, that's pain. If you're not doing any exercise, stretching, mobility, which empty the sink, it's always going to come back. So you can then go through a bout of massage, physiotherapy, that empties the sink. If you're not doing anything for yourself, that will eventually fill back up again. So just your lifestyle will affect always how flexible and how strong you are. Okay. Any other questions there? I'm just looking forward to seeing how flexible everyone is. Yeah? Right. Let's clear some chairs away. We just pop them at the side there. Actually, ankle mobility, your ability to get yourself under and access your midfoot. The first thing we're going to look at is get Brett a thumb and fist away from the wall. So your big toe is touching there. With keeping your heel on the ground and your knee in line with the middle of your foot, can you lean forward and touch the wall?
I don't know. Can't get down to do that, but...
Yeah. Nice. That's impressive. How are you on your left-hand side?
I must have cheated there.
No, so that looked a bit too easy.
I did. I know we're fine on that side.
Yeah, that's really better.
Just the right side that's stiff, yeah.
So much better, like movement quality there. So that allows, if Brett can do that, get his feet that forward and can't squat to depth, we would then look at something else. Okay, so if you give us a squat now, see how that, yeah, so no problems there, no problems there. Let's try the hardest one, some rack slides. So squat, try and keep the bar against this the entire time and come up. Wasn't bad.
Yeah, it was alright.
I'm going to try and do an overhead squat without leaning into the rack.
Oh no. That's what was holding me up.
Yeah, exactly.
Alright, you ready?
Okay. So if you do that again, just to show off.
My shoulders are killing.
I'm going to hold my hand just where the bar starts and see where it finishes.
Oh, wow.
So it's to here.
There's no weight on
So
it.
we've got a little bit of travel there. What we would then be looking at for Brett, the things we looked at in the past, is his ability to stay upright over load. Okay? So, next person. So we'll leave Brett, we won't bully him anymore because he's bigger than me. And to the bar. And then use the bar to pull yourself forward.
That's impressive, Chris.
That's good. So we would use that as a baseline.
But does it matter, sorry, I don't want to point at you, where he's hinging from? Because there's so much movement in the spine instead of the hips there.
Again, it's spine and hip assessment that we're looking at, so nothing in isolation. But what we will do with the next one is see, are we accessing that through the spine or the hip? So it's all just about trying to build a pattern up for someone. Okay. So that is really good. It's really wide. We're about 6 foot there. Come back up there. We're then going to see, can we maintain something like that through a squat, through the movement? Okay. So you're going to start in a squat, slight hinge pattern. So can you squat down while keeping your hips onto the wall at all times? Okay. Without moving anything other than your hips on.
So from here?
Yep, hinge back till just your hips touch.
Okay.
Good. And then try and maintain that as you squat. It's back rounds.
What's that?
So if you try and keep upright the entire time as well. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
And then back up. So here,
Yeah.
keep the back in line there as you drop down. So let's get into that position again. So hinge forward a little bit till your hips touch.
Okay.
Good. Keeping your back at that angle. Don't let that move. Don't lean into the wall. Squat. Okay. So that was really good. Until you get to here, you're then having to access a little bit of upper back to get it a little bit further. Okay. So we would then want to look at hinge drills, mobility drills, to open up the hips to allow you to create that space to come a little bit lower. Okay? This one, we're going to be looking at your shoulder and back mobility. So you're going to lie against the wall here, back completely flat. Doesn't really matter what your legs are doing. You're then just going to try and keep your chest up. Touch the wall there.
Oh, that's an easy one.
So move your hips all the way back to the wall. Good. And chest up, try and keep your low back off the wall.
Lower back off.
Yeah. So you might need to shove your hips back a little bit further. Lower back off, staying tall. Arms out in front of you. And then
go.
Good. Keep your arms here and straight. So you have maybe a bit of bicep tightness there. You should straighten your arms. Come back down. Yeah. So go completely straight. And don't let your arms flare out. Keep your elbows facing forward. Different now, isn't it?
Yeah, just a bit.
Yeah. Where do you feel tight with that?
In my back.
Yeah, mid-back?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else want to try? Yeah. Or I think you'll be really good at that one. So hips against, low back off, elbows facing forward. No problems at all. As we said, mobility is a spectrum.
It's really interesting watching those patterns though, and where people want to default into, and
Yeah.
they don't have that available.
This is where people compensate, you know, because they've had to do that. They had to do the motion. You have to bend down and pick stuff up. It's whether are you using your hips or are you using your low back, are you using your hamstrings? You know, there's an optimal way to do things, but if you can't access that, your body's going to figure out other ways to do it because it can't not do it. The last one, you didn't get away that easily, is you're going to lie down, hands on all fours, hands behind you. And then just how far can you rock back?
I can't even start
with keeping the heels of your hands on the ground.
There's the question. Where's it looking wrong?
So hands facing towards. Yep, hands facing towards you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah, perfect. And now I just want you to try and sit your hips back to your heels while keeping this on the ground the entire way.
What a Wednesday night. There.
Okay. So what's interesting for you is you've actually lengthened really well through the biceps in this position.
Yeah.
When I asked you to do it against the wall, you couldn't straighten your arms.
It's.
Yeah, so really quite interesting.
What does that mean?
Is that a good stretch for working your wrist mobility?
Yeah, yeah.
Like you're looking for like front squat and all that type of stuff?
If you're looking for a front rack, yeah, that's a great position to get into, because what you can do with that is turn it into mobility drill. So you're coming forward and that allows you to engage at your lats and then push away to then lengthen them. That was my knees cracking, not my wrists. So. Yeah, so it's a great way to get in. So you slide in, engage the lats, then as they're engaged, like that finger trap that we talked about, you lengthen. No? How would you get on on that test?
Like that?
Yeah, perfect. Not bad at all.
Chris.
It really hurts that.
Yeah.
I honestly don't think I could even get into that position at all.
As well. Okay. So a lot of that came sort of from the shoulders there, which is what you don't want. Getting to a front rack is here. You want there.
But that, I don't have that then.
Yeah. So that would be something good for you to work into. Okay.
So I know that I can't get into a front rack position at all, and that I don't think I could even get into the start position for that. Like that is as far as they're going in, and they ain't going back.
What do you feel? What do you feel stopping you?
I can't rotate that way. Wrists. A little bit in the biceps, but it doesn't feel like that's what's stopping it.
So what's interesting is you see going into that position again. So this is where it's a little bit nuanced. It's not just about the movements again, it's how we do the movements.
It's tight in here, isn't it?
So his wrist is all the way around. His bicep is that way. You'd expect that to be, I mean, you can't even move it manually. So that's coming from here. There's no, move your wrist forward again. Bring your wrist forward. And then again, and then move it back. Now at his shoulder joint, where my finger was, there's no movement there. Yeah. So nothing's happening here. It's all happening at the wrist. We're blaming a tight wrist, but that's the only part that's moving. Yeah. So we're going from here to here, instead of here
So what you're saying is
to here.
Overtrained. It's a bit up here.
Over, yeah. It's shoulder. There's nothing.
That's common in strongman though, isn't it? Because everything's, it's more, It's
here, everything's here. Stones, even yoke, you're having to brace. So everything is internal.
What's the fix for that? Like posterior delts?
Working on external rotation.
Okay.
But do you want a fix? Because is it not all irrelevant if Brett doesn't need to be doing that because he needs to be carrying boulders about? Like, do you want to have that?
It's true.
That's all you do.
That's my purpose,
Yeah, it's exactly what we talked about when it needs to be sports specific, isn't it? If it's affecting his ability to get into a front rack position, which is then, so we need the external rotation to be able to get into at least a back squat. You can see he was struggling with that there. So, and then not able to then do a front squat we're not able to do basic movement patterns, so which form part of his training and form part of his competition. So that's when it would become a problem. If it wasn't affecting competition, we would leave it. Things like Floyd Mayweather has a stick out chin. You think that would be bad for boxing. He's one of the best boxers who's ever lived. So you wouldn't fix that. Same as Michael Jordan, he's very internal rotated. Michael Phelps has issues with internal rotation at his shoulder as well, but it's probably what made him a great swimmer. So it's, again, relative to the sport. Nothing is bad if it works. So we just keep going. If we need to change it, and it's going to be more work to change it than it would be to not, then we keep as is and work around. Half the people starting the mobility drills will do 2, they'll take a break, other people will then jump in. So the first one is flow into between each. You're starting off just in that favourite 90-90 and you're just rocking back and forth. Just 6 each side. Then we're going to go into lifts. So in this 90-90 position, you then lift your front leg 6 times. Lift your back leg 6 times. Swap over and do the same there. Okay? How is this feeling?
That's good, Joy.
Yeah, right, it's good. Okay. Right, I'm going to use you to demonstrate the next one. So if you get into that 90-90 position again, bring this leg out a little bit here. You're then just going to try and keep your hands on the ground.
We'll have to work
Lift your leg up.
in tandem, Chris. He's stuck.
Just like that, Rob. Good. And then if you can't lift your leg up, then you keep your foot down and lift your knee. Yeah.
We need a leg lift, Brett.
Probably going to be a bit of cramping.
Yeah, outside.
The gym.
Good. Stay up. So leg to be a little bit further back. Oh, without knocking you over. And then roll into that way. Yes. Good. Let's work into just a nice simple 10 cobras. Up, really trying to look up to the ceiling. Back down. And up. Then going the opposite way, almost into this kind of dynamic child's pose with your hands up. So you're here, sitting back, arms forward, then pull in. Okay? Cobra, you're dropping your hips down, and then you're almost getting into this reverse press up. Back of the class here, just chugging along nicely. Slide your hands forward as you drop your hips back, then you pull them in. That's really good. Really good.
Get back up.
Good. Yeah, that's perfect.
You know you're going to have to show us how to do it again now.
Just squat down. Squat, overhead press. What I was trying to say as upright as you can. Brett? No, I was getting the two halves. This is your idea. This is your idea. Giving this one a go.
Okay, keep the lifters on.
There's another 5. There's another 5 here if anyone wants 5.
Oh, how about...
Of course.
I like them these exercises, so I'd say I'm pretty mobile and flexible.
Notice that,
I feel like I click. No, I could
It's
go
alright.
through the house.
No, it's partly because you're flexible. You're using the joints a lot. Creates a lot of fluid in the joints as you stretch
find
them.
it
And
easier,
you're able
yeah.
to form some
Yeah.
pop, squat. Yeah.
And then what, do this?
Yeah, try and stay upright, head up. So head up.
You want a
Sit.
shot?
Sit down. 20. Go on.
I did it.
Did you? That's crazy. So try and hold behind your neck. Yeah.
How do you not get confused by it's a warm-up versus mobility? Or is it the same thing?
Is it starting to affect your performance in your lifts? Then it's too intense. If it's enhancing, then that's a good thing. If you're leaving feeling, if you're leaving your mobility session, you're
Warm
like,
up.
I'm warmed up, I'm ready to go, that's good. If you're leaving your mobility session gassed, then it's too intense. Absolutely, it will carry through the rest of the day. If you do something in the morning, 15, 20 minutes, get the body moving, that will carry on. Like it won't just be an hour or so that it has benefit for. It will carry through the rest of the day.
It's something I Google and look for on YouTube, so they give you what should I be looking for to work out what a good full body workout would be for that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really go wrong with just starting anywhere, to be honest.
What was the
here-
main four that you said going through?
Sorry?
So like ankles, shoulders, rib cage.
So
Hips.
you'd look at ankle mobility, hip rotation, shoulder mobility, and rib cage.
So you picked up like one of those four and started with that. You built up. Okay, cool.
Yeah. If you were doing a squat heavy session that day, and you're quite tight at your hips, you would just do a 20-minute, 15-20 minute hip mobility. It's always going to have it best being primed specifically for you, or engaging in a program that's specific to your tightness. But if it's a press heavy day, you would then maybe think about doing an upper body opener.
Okay.
So general rule is 4 or 5 out of 10, and you think this is moving from being uncomfortable to painful, then you just go a little bit below that.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
No, thanks for coming, guys. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.